budget presentation session, November 6th, 2024. We are going to have Stephanie go through the whole budget process, how we got to the numbers we got to, and then after she presents it, it'll be available for the public to review, listen to, ask us questions as we go into November, and then we'll vote on it, and it will become our final budget for the 2025 calendar year.
If you don't mind, can you just say for the record when the vote is?
Yeah.
Okay. Steph, when's the vote?
The vote will be, well, I'm going to go through that in my presentation. You're like stealing my thunder. But it'll be December 18th. No, it's okay. I couldn't remember. I knew as soon as I said it, I'm like, I don't remember.
The floor is yours.
Okay.
All right, so I've set the plate for where we're at. Stephanie, please take it away.
Okay, thank you very much, President Sokolowski. So everyone knows that the budget is one of my favorite things to do every year. Again, this year was an extremely efficient process. I'm going to go through just a brief outline. So I'll go over the budget process itself. We'll do an overview of department accomplishments from 2024, and then I'll move right into a proposed budget overview for 2025. It'll be an explanation of revenue sources, budget highlights, department goals, and then I will go through the next steps of the budget process, which will include when the vote is going to be. So budget timeline. The budget process really starts in July every year. So we use that month to compile capital budget requests and council goals. Then in August, all the operational budgets, so all of our general operating funds, all of those expenditures are due into my office. September, we do our major budget workshop. So we're here for 5 hours that night. We work through all the line items, all the capital items. That's really where we work through all the logistics of the budget itself. So thank you to everybody who sat through that very long meeting, but it's very important. And then in October, we take all the feedback from that meeting and we do any revisions to the budget that need to happen. November, I am here to present the proposed draft budget. On November 20th, the next public meeting, the budget and the tax levy ordinance will be on the agenda for consideration to advertise. It will then be placed in the lobby of the Borough Hall, and the budget itself, we call it the budget narrative document, will be uploaded to the website and it's available for view. And then again, on December 18th, the budget and the tax levy ordinance will be on the agenda for consideration for adoption. So that is the timeline. And that is how we administratively move through the compilation of the budget in conjunction with our elected officials. So before I move into the overview of the proposed 2025 budget, I think it's important to reflect on the accomplishments from 2024 because they highlight the many services that the community receives as a result of their tax dollars. It also exemplifies that the borough works hard on a regular basis to provide quality service to its constituents. We had a very busy year, so bear with me as I move through each department. There's a long list of accomplishments for each, but I think they're important to highlight, especially as we're talking about the budget for 2025. So we'll start with the police department. The biggest accomplishment this year from the police department is that we hired a new chief of police, Chief Lennon. So congratulations, Chief Lennon, for moving into that chief's role. But moving into the other accomplishments from the police department. So they updated a weapons inventory and instituted a new comprehensive firearms policy. They updated the department's non-lethal weapon inventory, which are tasers, to replace out-of-date energy weapons along with required training. We had sergeants who completed advanced emergency management training, and all of our sergeants are now NIMS ICS 300 level trained. We appointed a new sergeant to the position of detective sergeant. We participated in the Montgomery County Police Testing Consortium, which resulted in the department hiring 2 new officers and established a list that is required by our civil service requirements. So that is for future hiring purposes. We instituted a summer internship program. We hosted a bike rodeo for bike safety training and bike giveaways at Conshohocken Elementary. They installed a license plate reader cameras throughout the borough to aid in traffic safety and criminal investigations. They upgraded and implemented key software programs. They maintained community outreach programs like Shop with a Cop, Toys for Tots, Thanksgiving dinner giveaway, Coffee and Conversation with a Cop, National Night Out, partnership with Carsey, and a community shred event. They applied for and received a Bulletproof Vest Partnership grant to replace 8 expired ballistic vests. They applied for and received a $25,000 grant from the PA Commission on Crime and Delinquency for a new computer server to meet our community security standards. They applied for and received a local share account grant in the amount of $70,000 for a new fully equipped police vehicle. They added a second vehicle to the fire police unit to respond to incidents and assist with traffic control during events. They brought 2 parking payment kiosks online in the business district. They activated and staffed the Emergency Operations Center during planned events and planned emergencies. They continue to plan and prepare for events in coordination with emergency management, fire, and EMS. And you can just see from a few of these pictures, these are just samples over the course of the year, not only their engagement in the community, but also Chief Lennon's appointment, changes within the department in terms of personnel. This is them at the Conshohocken summer day camp. And then I couldn't help myself to include our own officers participating in our first ever bike race that was held in Conshohocken. Was a huge success. And then just items that are to come in terms of holiday engagement with the community from our police department. So very busy, very successful year. And again, a huge congratulations to Chief Lennon for stepping into his new role. Moving into the fire department put a new engine into service. A water rescue team received Swift Water 1A certification from the state. They continued high water rescue vehicle and boat operator training. A new water rescue trailer was put into service. We had 2 new EMS e-bikes that were put into service, and they were used throughout the borough, especially during events. We had a new electric Ford F-150 Lightning that was put into service, and again, that aligns with our objectives through the EAC. We participated and hosted community events like sprinkler nights, smoke detector giveaways, and the annual Colonial Fire Prevention. We equipped part-time firefighters with EMT and paramedic experience, trained borough staff and volunteers in first aid and stop the bleed techniques, continued use of the QRS program in conjunction with Narberth Ambulance. All personnel attended traffic incident management safety training, and they developed and implemented new standard operating guides. Moving into emergency management. They continued training for all emergency management staff. They utilized Code Red to keep residents informed and up to date on all events, shelter in place, and evacuation notifications. The drone team assisted in 2 recovery missions on the river. They utilized the radio dispatch center for communications during community events and storm response. They added an additional camera to the USGS flood gauge to monitor velocity of the river. They outfitted the EOC with 8 laptop computers for use in community trainings. They added a security camera to Fayette Street with the capability of seeing both directions of traffic. They purchased a property for the future construction of a new public safety facility at the entrance of the Borough of Conshohocken, and that purchase has gone through. That property is now the property of the Borough of Conshohocken. They attended monthly community emergency management trainings, and they outfitted borough vehicles with trauma packs that we got through a grant and trained staff on their use. Moving into licensing and inspections. So they expanded, this department this year expanded to include 2 new additional personnel, and they've been very successful in their roles, and we're very lucky to have them on board. We put 3 electric vehicles into service, again, sticking with the goals and objectives that were set by the EAC that Borough Council approved. All of the employees achieved new certifications from the International Code Council, and property maintenance was handled proactively and aggressively to increase enforcement and prevent issues. And then we successfully completed the state accessibility audit. Moving into public services. Public services has 5 different divisions. We have a buildings division, a sanitation and recycling division, a streets division, parks division, and our new division this year, which was a stormwater management division. So we're going to hit on all 5 of those right now. The buildings division, they installed a vapor shield in the admin building for fire suppression. They upgraded the HVAC, installed a new roof at the A Field building, replaced the fire pump and HVAC roof units at the community center, evaluated and repainted the interiors of all borough facilities, installed carpet and soundproofing tiles in the police station, upgraded access control at borough facilities, and as you can see in this room, we upgraded this room with frosted glass on the borough council chambers. The sanitation and recycling division, they adhere to all CDL requirements. They scheduled and completed multiple DEP-approved e-waste pickups, and they completed the first ever river cleanup, which removed 3,300 pounds of waste from the river. The streets division installed new parking kiosks in the commercial district. They utilized the new street sweeper to clean and maintain roads. They upgraded street signs. They trained on the new milling attachment and continued use of the mastic machine to fill potholes and repair streets. And that's important because that's an in-house service that we can now provide the community. They utilized the new bucket truck to hang banners and trim trees. Again, an in-house service that we don't have to pay an outside consultant to do, and repainted street crosswalks for better visibility and safety. The Parks Division installed a new Gaga pit. You can see it up there on the screen at Marywood Park, and we did that project in conjunction with the Girl Scouts, which was extremely successful. We installed new flower beds at the community center, completed the new Santander Pocket Park at 6th and Fayette, and assisted in the batting cage installation and trail restoration projects at Sutcliffe Park. And then this new stormwater division. So we have a brand new department. We have new staff that are allocated specifically for that purpose, a new budget. We're working directly in conjunction with the sewer authority because the stormwater system is now the sewer authority, and we are hired as a consultant to operate and maintain the stormwater system. But they've repaired over a dozen inlets and manholes throughout the borough. They've replaced and repaired inlet tops and grates. They administered stormwater repairs at the East Elm Street Salt Barn, and they maintained the basin behind Haynes and Salvati Park. Okay, I'm moving into recreation services, and I'm apologizing in advance because Lauren sent me a very long list from the year. But just an overview. We restored the Sutcliffe Park basketball courts with a new surface. It looks fantastic down at Sutcliffe Park. We restored the A Field building roof, restored the A Field walking track. We completed upgrades to the community center with a new drinking fountain, new paint, new TVs, new air hockey table. If you ever want to see where all the kids in Conshohocken are going, go see what they're doing with the air hockey table at the community center in the afternoon right after school. They constructed a storage garage for the community center. They applied for a grant that would allow the purchase and installation of a new HVAC unit in the gym with a cooling option. They continued in-house group fitness classes, programs, and offerings in our parks. They operated an in-house summer day camp and specialty camp that sold out within an hour. And we have built into the budget for 2025 an expansion of that service, which I'll talk about in a little bit. We offered an in-house after-school program to support the students and families of Conshohocken Elementary. They continued to offer line dance fusion classes, which were extremely successful at the Marywood Park House. They continued summer basketball clinics in addition to winter clinics in partnership with the Moore Brothers Basketball. They have a partnership with Yoga Home. They offered yoga in the parks, little yogi classes, yoga for beginners. There's even a yoga book club. We have an email distribution through Constant Contact, and we compile the Recreation Department activity guide that comes out twice a year. We developed a relationship with Skyhawk Sports Academy chapter to offer, we now offer golf, flag football, cheerleading, and another multi-sport program. We offer silver sneakers and Renew Active Fitness for the use of the community center and the fitness center. We maintained a youth and legacy group policy. We started a working relationship with Colonial Soccer Club. We maintained a strong working relationship with Chestnut Hill College Sprint Football and Philadelphia White Marsh Rugby. We have a working relationship with Heyday Athletics, and that provides this comprehensive and inclusive co-ed program for adults. We're seeing more young adults come into the borough, and so this relationship with Heyday allows for us to provide programming and services for that portion of our residents. We partnered with community organizations for toy drives, coat giveaways, clothing drives, and prom dress donations. We expanded our relationship with the Conshohocken Art League to offer art programs as part of recreation services offerings. And they host a myriad of special events throughout the year, which sell out immediately, and Lauren and her crew team do a great job. So we have the Dreams Come True Superhero Princess Party. We host American Red Cross blood drives, the annual Donna Frio basketball tournament, the Easter egg hunt, the George Sneer girls basketball tournament, infant CPR classes, the Medicare seminar, numerous movies in the park, pumpkin painting, senior barbecue, a senior Thanksgiving luncheon, a senior holiday luncheon, a winter wonderland event, and the list goes on. Moving into administrative services. So I always say administrative services, I don't have a bunch of pictures to show because I can't physically, tangibly show in a picture what they do every day. But the services that the administrative department, in terms of finance and HR, are pivotal to the overall operation of the borough. So over the course of this year, we completed successful financial audits, our internal audit, a liquid fuels audit, a workers' comp audit, and pensions audit. So lots of audits going on. We maintained ACA compliance. We completed a safety committee recertification, hosted wellness clinics for our borough employees in conjunction with the Delaware Valley Health Trust. We utilized the Delaware Valley Trust risk control grants to be able to implement some of the things you've already seen without using taxpayer dollars. So we always look to utilize that relationship with the Divot Trust. We implemented an update to the employee return to work process following any leave. We found that this ensures a smooth transition and clear communication for all team members, not just that specific employee who was on leave, but the team that they're coming back to. That has been a very successful and welcome addition to our policies and procedures. We held cybersecurity training. We represented the borough in county-wide human resource consortium meetings, and we finalized and implemented an updated personnel manual for non-union employees that wasn't updated since 2008. Moving into zoning. So zoning had a very busy year this year. Brittany, were you busy? Okay. We completed over 30 zoning conditional use and relief extension hearings. They implemented the newly adopted Fayette Street Overlay District Ordinance, which was in conjunction with our comprehensive plan from 2018, and they continue to track and process enforcement of properties in violation of the borough's zoning districts and floodplain conservation overlay district regulations. Moving into community development and grants. They completed the majority of the Sutcliffe Park Trail reconstruction project. There's still a portion of it going on, but the majority of it is complete. They completed the 2022 CDBG curb ramp project, which completed the installation of 8 new curb ramps on the east side of Fayette Street. They rehabbed 4 properties through the housing rehab program. They completed and submitted applications for grants, and I'll explain where we are with those grants in a minute. We applied for and received an extension of the 2021 CDBG funding, so we have an additional year to utilize those dollars. So that's grant money that's not leaving the borough, it's staying in our account. We received favorable monitoring letters from DCED in the areas of the 2021 CDBG housing rehab activities and fiscal management. We have 8 new dedicated handicap parking spaces processed, 16 cafe licenses for outdoor dining, and then moving into grants. So we do have Christine Stetler in our office who applies for and manages grant programs, and then we also have some of our professionals in terms of our engineering firms apply for and manage grants on our behalf. So it just depends on the type of grant that we're looking for and going for. So in 2024, we were awarded the following grants. So we have the Bulletproof Vest, that was a $6,000 grant. The RDA Revolving Loan Fund, which was a no repayment loan to the borough in the amount of $1.4 million. The Sewer Authority H2O grant in the amount of $1.4 million. The local share account for the police vehicle in the amount of $70,000. The PA grant on crime and delinquency in the amount of $23,831. And a recycling grant, which is an annual grant, in the amount of $42,513. So in addition to those grants that were awarded, we also have pending applications that are currently under consideration. So those applications consist of a $10,000 Pico Green Regions grant, a $1 million Main Street grant, a $1 million LSA grant, a $1,324,000 Multimodal Transportation Fund grant, a $508,000 DCED MTF grant, a $590,000 grant that's earmarked specifically for the HVAC replacement at the community center for the gym specifically, $150,000 pending for a 2024 CDBG grant, $250,000 pending for a 2024 home grant, and then $355,000 pending for a 2024 Arley Mast Arm grant, which would be earmarked specifically for 2nd Avenue. So if I compile all those numbers for you, the 2024 grants that are approved are in the amount of $3,282,647. The 2024 grant applications that are currently pending are in the amount of $5,187,507. So I like to track all of our grants. So if I go back over 8 years and I look at all of the grants that the borough has received, so any grant that we've applied for and have been approved for, and the money has come in and we've utilized it to improve the quality of life for the Borough of Conshohocken, that 8-year total is $15,625,535. So that's $15.6 million that the borough has received on behalf of its residents that we have not had to utilize tax dollars in order to improve the quality of life for the residents of Conshohocken. $15.6 million over 8 years. All right, moving into communications and special events. They produce 2 borough newsletters a year. We launched the Conshohocken Cab. We upgraded the equipment in the AV room. We coordinated, planned, and organized all facets of borough-sponsored special events like the fireworks, summer concert series, Fun Fest, the Halloween parade, the Halloween drive-in movie, the holiday drive-in movie, the holiday house decorating contest, the EAC Green Fest, the Eagles block party, the Phillies rally, the St. Patrick's Day parade, the Arts Festival and Car Show, the Soapbox Derby, the first ever Simon's Heart bike race, the Christmas tree lighting, and the annual grand menorah lighting. They also assessed and improved photography needs for events by purchasing proper equipment. They redesigned the FunFest webpage to increase visibility for vendors and sponsors. The FunFest event this year had a record number of vendors, so we had 99 vendors and a very long wait list. Like I said, we hosted the first ever bike race, and then we purchased AV equipment. We got all those grants in, so we had to find a way to host press conferences in the lobby. So we were able to make that happen with some new AV equipment. So again, the accomplishments I just discussed are an overview of the borough operations in 2024. And I would just like to thank all the borough staff, some are here, some are not, for their hard work, and our elected officials. None of this happens without you. So thank you for all your guidance and your direction over the course of the year. And at the same time, I just want to thank the entire borough community, those that are here, those that are watching. It's through your efforts that Conshohocken was named one of the best overall places to live in Pennsylvania, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. Our entire community made up of borough residents, businesses, community groups, visitors, borough council, the mayor, borough admin, they all contribute to making Conshohocken the premier destination to live, work, play, and grow. And yes, Mike, I'll be saying that again later tonight. So I feel like the accomplishments and the highlights over the course of the year illustrates that your tax dollars are being put to good use. I'm immensely proud to be a member of this borough team. I am extremely hopeful as we look towards the future. We will continue to serve Conshohocken and assess how we can collectively build a better future for generations to come. Okay, so now that we've gone through an overview of 2024, I'm going to move into 2025. Take a sip of water real fast. All right, 2025. So to really understand the budget, you start with your primary revenue sources. So we have a plethora of revenue sources, and I'll get into the full gamut of them in a couple minutes. But I just want to start with a review of your primary revenue sources, which is your tax basis, basically. You have real estate tax, real estate transfer tax, earned income tax, local services tax, mercantile tax, business privilege tax, and fund balance, which is your reserve funds. For the purposes of the next couple minutes, I'm going to focus on real estate tax. But just to show you a breakdown on a chart, basically, of your primary revenue sources, again, not all of your revenue sources, but your primary, you're looking at $6.8 million coming in from your earned income tax, $375,000 coming from your mercantile, $4 million coming in from your business privilege, $390,000 from your local service tax, $1 million from your fund balance. You have to take into account your prior real estate, your delinquent, your interim, and your transfer tax, and then your real estate tax, which is $2,581,457. So let's talk about real estate tax. So we're going to look at that dark blue section of the chart. And the reason why we're going to highlight real estate tax is because the real estate tax is the main source of revenue that directly affects the residents of Conshohocken. The borough's overall annual revenues, minus the utilization of fund pounds, is estimated at roughly $18 million for 2025. So if you're looking at that full $18 million minus your fund balance, you're basically looking at 2.6 of the $18 million that's coming from the resident's pocket through real estate tax. So that's roughly 14% of the budget. So that means that 86% of the annual income that is generated on an annual basis is coming through commerce, businesses, and grants. In other words, residents are getting to enjoy daily everything that makes the borough special without bearing the brunt of the financial burden for all of the services, amenities, facilities, safety measures, and special events. And I think this graph kind of gives you, it illustrates how that breakdown ends up really working. Okay, so let's dive deeper into understanding what the borough real estate tax means directly to a borough resident. So I'm going to take a second to provide a brief explanation of how we put your tax dollars to work. So when we talk about real estate taxes, we are talking about millage. And millage is based on the assessed value of a property, not the market value. So I think that's, everyone, there's some confusion over assessed value and market value. And when we're talking about real estate taxes, it's not calculated off of a market value. So you could have a home that if you go to a realtor and they say that's worth $500,000, but then if you go to your actual county tax records, there's an assessed value with that property, and that is significantly lower than that market value. So when we're talking about millage and real estate taxes, we're talking about assessed value. So for example, the gross property assessed value in 2024 for all parcels in the Borough of Conshohocken was roughly $790 million in 2024. We have roughly, between commercial and residential, 3,600 parcels. So if you do that calculation, the number of parcels divided, the total gross property value divided by the number of parcels, you can calculate a medium assessed home value. Understanding that that calculation is going to be somewhat high because it's also factoring in commercial and larger apartment facilities. But for purposes of this example, I'm just utilizing it to explain how we're getting to that median value. So if you do that calculation, the medium assessed value in Conshohocken is roughly $216,000. And if you compare that to the medium home assessed value in Montgomery County, Pennsylvania, that medium assessed value is $143,000. So you're within that range. But this is all a way to explain that for presentation purposes this evening, I'm utilizing the assessed value of $200,000 for a home's assessed value because that's a close ballpark in terms of what that median would be in the Borough of Conshohocken. Okay, so the millage rate is the amount per 1,000 used to calculate taxes on a property. 1 mil represents $1 in taxes per 1,000 in tax assessed value. So if we're using a home's assessed value at $200,000, that means that 1 mil of tax equals $200. So then you look at your total millage rate for the Borough of Conshohocken, and in 2024, that was 35.356 mils. So that means that in this example, this homeowner owes $35.356 in taxes for every 1,000 in tax assessed value. If you do a calculation, that comes out to $7,071.20. So you take your mills, your overall mills, you multiply it by what that value of 1 mil would be to get, that's how you calculate what this property owner would owe in taxes annually to the borough. So in this example, it's roughly $7,000. What makes up the millage? So I said in the previous slide that the total millage is 35.356, but that millage doesn't all go to the Borough of Conshohocken. It gets split between 4 different entities, and I think that's very important. That 35.356 is not all coming to the Borough of Conshohocken. 4.788 mils is going to Montgomery County. 0.39 mils is going to the Montgomery County Community College. 4.5 mils is going to the borough, and then 25.678 mils is going to the Colonial School District. So yes, a Borough of Conshohocken resident is going to owe that total 35.356 mils, but they're not all going to the Borough of Conshohocken. Only 4.5 of that 35 is going to the Borough of Conshohocken. So let's put it together. What does that actually mean in a dollar figure for a borough resident? So if this particular homeowner owes roughly $7,000 in total annual property taxes, they owe $900 a year to the Borough of Conshohocken. They owe $957.60 to the county, $78 to the community college, and $5,135.60 to the Colonial School District. And then break it down again. So where are your tax dollars going? Your tax dollars are going, you can see it on the chart, the majority of your tax dollars for a Borough of Conshohocken resident, roughly 73%, are going to the Colonial School District. 13.54% are going to Montgomery County. Roughly 1% is going to the community college, and then 12.73% is going to the Borough of Conshohocken. And I think this year was a little bit different than other years, is that the Borough of Conshohocken is actually getting less of a percentage than the county. So a resident of the Borough of Conshohocken They're paying the majority of their taxes to the Colonial School District, then to Montgomery County, then to the Borough of Conshohocken, and then to the community college. So what does this breakdown actually mean for a borough resident? So if we use my previous example, it means that this particular property owner would owe approximately $75 a month to the borough. And when you go back and listen to all the accomplishments from 2024, you can see the services that you get. But what are they, just to list them out? So you're getting what for $75 a month? You're getting trash removal. You're getting recycling, snow plowing, snow removal, upgraded, new, and maintained parks, pocket parks, 24/7 police protection, fire protection, emergency services, library services, licensing and inspections enforcement, permitting, property maintenance, park programming, road improvements, a community center, and access to all the free special events that you just saw presented to you, to name just a few services that you're getting for $75 a month. It's not a bad deal. All right, so we talked about how tax dollars are broken down for a resident. We're now going to talk about the breakdown and the value of 1 mil and what that means for the budget itself. How do we compile our operating funds is basically what we're talking about. So the assessed value for 2025 is estimated at $796,753,149. Our millage is remaining the same. We're proposing a budget this evening for 2025 that does not have a tax increase proposed. So we're staying at 4.5 mils. So you calculate the millage based off the assessed value. You get an estimated revenue. You have to account for penalties, delinquents, and discounts. So your estimated real estate tax that will be collected in 2025 is $3,469,389. So what do we do with that $3.4 million? We break it down into different operating funds. And for our purposes, we break it down into 6 operating funds. And we have a new fund this year that we are proposing. So you have a general operating fund, which carries the bulk of all your operations. Then you have a street light, a debt service, a fire, a library. And we are proposing to introduce a new fund this year that has millage allocated to it, which would be a road fund. Each one of those funds is allocated a specific proportion of the total 4.5 mils. So you can see up on the screen, general gets 3.3483 and a specific tax revenue. Streetlight gets 0.1225, debt service 0.7000, fire 0.1254, library 0.0836, and the new road fund, which we are proposing to allocate for 2025 as its first year at 0.1202. So just breaking it down so you can see, your general fund will get $2,581,457 to operate in 2025 from real estate taxes. Streetlight will get $94,444, debt service $539,683, fire protection $96,680, library will get $64,454, and the road fund would have $92,671. If you add all those numbers together for all of your operating funds, you get your real estate taxes that are estimated at $3,469,389. Okay, so we have now talked about tax revenue and how those real estate taxes are utilized, and more importantly, what those real estate tax dollars mean to a borough resident. So now I'm going to move into the proposed 2025 budget. Most importantly this evening, what I am presenting is a balanced budget. We have revenues and expenditures that are equaling $19,382,359. For revenues, that includes utilization of the fund balance. For expenditures, that includes utilization It includes movement of funds to transfer accounts, which are reserve funds. But again, a balanced budget, and again, no tax increase proposed. So moving into a breakdown of general fund operating revenues. So previously we reviewed the main tax sources of revenue. This chart is encompassing all revenues. So basically all of your taxes with all of your departmental revenues that are generated through services. Again, you're looking at your property taxes, they're roughly 14%. Your Local Tax Enabling Act, which includes EIT, Mercantile, BPT, and LST, is roughly 62% of your revenues. And then you go into licensing and permits at 2.93%, fines and forfeits at around 1%, interest, rents, and royalties at roughly 4.22%, intergovernmental revenues at 5.33%, department charges for services around $760,000 or 3.93%, operating revenues that are unclassified at around 1.27%, and then of course your fund equity, which is your fund balance, which you're utilizing from your reserves in order to balance your budget at the total of $1,046,650 or roughly 5%. And rolling into expenditures. So again, this chart breaks it down mostly into the different operating departments that we have within our administration. So general government, the expenditure side is roughly $3 million or 15.76%. Our police services are roughly 39% or 7.5 million. Fire and emergency services are 6.5%, 1.2 million. Licensing and inspections is 5% at 1 million. Public services, which includes buildings, sanitation, streets, and parks. We still have stormwater pulled out of this just so we can monitor it specifically because it's only in year one. This will be year two. So public services without the stormwater is 19% at 3.6 million. Culture and recreation is 5.77% at 1.1 million. We have other expenditures that are contingencies, compensations, that are at 1% or 226,000, and then interfund transfers at around $1 million at 5.16%. And then stormwater, again, we're just pulling that out so we can monitor it for year two, which is roughly 2.74% or 530,000. So it's important to note that the overall increase from 24 to 25 is roughly 8.61%. The majority of that increase is coming from contractual obligations, pension requirements, healthcare costs, overtime costs, and new personnel additions to meet the service needs of the borough. When we're doing the budget process, and we have these conversations mostly at the September work session, but we're really looking at industry averages. And that industry average is roughly around 4.5% in a static environment. The borough is not in a static environment. It's continuing to grow. We're continuing to evolve. So we're continuing to have our budget evolve with that growth as well. So once we get into a static environment, that'll be a conversation at our September work session, but for purposes of 2025, we're not there yet. So since we're not in that static environment, we do have additional personnel that are added into this proposed budget. If I were to remove the costs that are associated with that new personnel, the overall budgetary increase would be around 5% as opposed to 8.6%. So therefore, based on that calculation, the borough is following its normal operating policy as it pertains to budgetary increase. It's following market trends, and most importantly, it's incorporating a slightly higher percentage increase in the budget without the need for a tax increase. And there's a lot of strategy that Borough Council goes through on an annual basis to make that make that financially feasible, that you can take that higher percentage, absorb it into your budget, and not have to have a tax increase. So I just take a minute to thank Borough Council and the mayor for their very strategic decision-making over the course of the last few years that has positioned the budget in a capacity to absorb a higher percentage increase without having to burden the borough residents with a tax increase. And then moving into a breakdown of major cost centers. So we break them down into personnel, operating, and interfund transfers to reserve funds. So you have roughly 69% of your budget, or $13.3 million, that's allocated for personnel costs. You have 25.8%, or $5 million, for operating costs, and then 5%, or $1 million, that's being transferred into reserve funds. So if you look at industry norms, personnel makes up roughly 2/3 of the budget usually, so we're within range of those industry norms. And then if you look at a further breakdown, which we do internally, of personnel costs by department, that 69% is the overall, so all personnel included. And our most expensive department in terms of personnel is the police. So the police department actually makes up 51.38% of that overall 69%. It's about $7 million of a $13 million budget. Okay, so we've gone through revenues, expenditures, major cost centers. So you might ask, what's the justification for all those proposed costs? I know that I get asked that every single day. So we're going to look at some budget highlights for 2025, some departmental goals. How am I on time? Oh, I'm okay. I can make it. I can do it. In terms of budget highlights for this evening, again, I know I sound like a broken record, but no tax increase. You have a continued investment into reserve funds and your OPEB trust, and that's important because we're putting money aside to ensure the financial viability of the borough in the long term. We are presenting a balanced budget. We are including an investment into public safety. So for fire services, we have a fire stipend program, uniforms, equipment, radios. We're introducing an arson canine who was here. Watson was, well, it wasn't Watson, but Watson will be our arson canine and be making an appearance shortly. And we have an increased appropriation to our volunteer firefighters. For police services, we have hybrid police vehicles that are on their way, IT and software upgrades and protection, an updated wellness room, policy review, which Chief Lennon has assured me is going to be his favorite thing next year, traffic safety equipment, and officer safety equipment. Emergency services is we're investing in vehicle barriers to ensure the safety of our residents at all those events that you just heard about. Updated flood gauge, IT security, thermal drones. Again, there's all these decisions that are made by our emergency management team that make sure that every resident is safe in the Borough of Conshohocken and can enjoy all of the amenities that we have here. And they don't get a lot of credit for everything that they do behind the scenes. And these are the tools that are built into the budget that allow them to perform those services, those safety services on everyone's behalf. And then in terms of Narberth, we are actually increasing the appropriation to Narberth Ambulance. That's built into the budget. There is a continued investment into public services. So we have made the decision to invest in our employees and give them the tools they need to do as many services as they can in-house. We're continuing that trend in 2025. So we have updated equipment, we have new pocket parks, stormwater upgrades, facility improvements, new and improved trash cans along Fayette, hybrid SUVs, sprinkler systems for the parks, the list goes on. We're continuing to invest in recreation services. All of those items can't happen in terms of accomplishments from 2024. We can't continue to improve the quality of life without an investment into those services. So we have new facility upgrades that are coming in terms of new windows, HVAC, potentially depending on grants. We are putting bike racks at parks because we are encouraging children and adults to utilize alternative modes of transportation. And we think that's an important initiative. We did build in the second year of the Conshohocken Borough Shuttle into the budget. We have a continued investment into pocket parks, open space, the borough's Main Street corridor with projects like the 2nd Avenue Veterans Plaza, the Weinman Pocket Park, the future public safety facility, which is underway, the Second Avenue Mast Arm, and a potential road diet program that, again, is grant dependent. We have matching funds allocated for grants in capital engineering and traffic engineering. We've generated a designated road fund that has allocated millage to supplement the borough's state liquid fuels dollars, with the goal of helping to ensure that a road project can occur on an annual basis and rectify problematic infrastructure issues in the borough in a strategic and deliberate manner. We've done this in other areas. We're now doing it with infrastructure. And then, of course, a continuation of quality service for our constituents, businesses, and visitors. And we've built in, again, increased personnel costs to meet the needs of an estimated, we're around 35% population increase, while still providing, most importantly, the same level of quality service to our constituents, businesses, and visitors that they have come to expect. All right, I'm going to talk fast, but I think it's also important to just talk about goals. So every department director in the budget process creates goals for the next fiscal year, and we ask that they be SMART goals, so they're specific, attainable, time-bound, measurable, and relevant. So I'm going to go through just a sampling from each department. So the police is going to construct a new office space for the detective sergeant position. They're going to promote physical health and reduce on-job injuries by updating the in-station health and wellness facility, procure a professional review and update the department's standard operating procedures, certify the detectives division in cell phone forensic examination training, replace and upfit the patrol fleet with 2 new hybrid vehicles, install a new server and upfit to comply with security requirements, continue working to identify and secure grants and training courses, replace and maintain equipment levels for items that are required for officers in the department's SOP, and continue to work with community leaders in a collaborative community policing effort while exploring new options for assisting residents in need. Our fire department, they're going to acquire, train, and certify an arson detection canine. They're going to put a new water rescue boat into service, continue to train and educate fire staff and volunteers, continue EMS training, as well as training for fire marshal certifications, and host the Colonial Fire Expo for Fire Prevention Week. Emergency management, their goal is always to safely oversee community events, including a brand new Flyers alumni event, which will happen in June of 2025. Continue education of municipal leaders and emergency responders, expand the UAV drone operations, and acquire enough vehicle security barriers to safely close Fayette Street on both sides during events. L&I will continue to educate the public on common property maintenance code violations and increase enforcement of such codes, review and assist with permitting throughout completion of new development projects, increase certification levels of all department personnel, and train the deputy fire marshal on current commercial building codes to act as a backup inspector. Public Works. So we have a buildings division. They will continue to examine the status of all facilities and future capital needs, replace hallway carpet, replace the roof of the Public Works garage, upgrade remaining access control. We'll put a new recycling truck into service through a DEP grant, utilize new software to evaluate road repairs and street signage, continue to evaluate park green space with 8 consecutive years of spring and fall tree plantings, complete the Weinman Pocket Park, and add irrigation systems to the Sutcliffe Park and B Field. And lastly, the Stormwater Division, they will purchase and install bicycle safety replacements for inlet tops and grates, and remove problem trees around the Haynes and Savati Basin. Recreation will be removing and installing new windows at the A-Field building, continue to improve program offerings for youth, teens, family, adults, and seniors, continue to increase program registration and community center memberships, implement new fees for membership facilities and parks, and evaluate and assess departmental staffing needs. Admin services will continue to focus on employee safety and wellness, provide continued training, and organize department files and archive records. Zoning is going to continue to process applications and conduct zoning hearings as required, continue to evaluate the zoning ordinances to meet the current needs of the community, and work with L&I on any enforcement needs. Community development and grants. We're still going to push these grants. We're going to push them hard. We think it's important for our community to go after these grants. The hope is that we get that other $5 million that's sitting out there pending, so we can add to that $15.6 million. And then for rehab, we will continue. We're hoping to rehab 6 properties through the CDBG and home grants. Communications and special events. Again, we'll just continue our special events and assess if there's any areas of potential growth. We are looking to develop and strengthen a relationship with our Conshohocken business owners and work collaboratively and strategically with the borough's marketing consultant if appointed, and also host a safe and successful Flyers event, which will be a new event for us, and again in June of 2025. I haven't lost my voice yet. So you may be asking, what happens now? So first and foremost, those budget highlights and the departmental goals, we believe that they provide justification for the operating and the capital dollars that we're proposing to spend in 2025. More importantly, we believe the budget encompasses all of the community feedback that we receive over the course of the year. And we believe it incorporates additions and needs that the community expressed as important initiatives to fund in the 2025 budget. Okay, so November 20th, your agenda will have on it consideration to authorize advertisement for the budget itself and the tax levy ordinance. They will be posted. There'll be public notices that go out. There'll be a copy in the borough lobby if you want to see a hard copy, or anyone from the borough wants to see a hard copy. And then it'll also be an electronic copy on the website. It'll be back on the agenda on December 18th for consideration to adopt. So before I conclude, I just want to make sure that it's important to note that the budget is advertised on an annual basis prior to our elected officials considering adoption, because it is the community who approves the budget every fiscal cycle. Therefore, we really do urge you to utilize this period of time between November and December to provide any feedback or pose any questions so that we can ensure that the borough's annual budget accurately reflects the needs of our community. So last but not least, I would just like to conclude by stating that we as administrators are honored to serve the Borough of Conshohocken, not just the elected officials, but also the residents, business owners, and community groups. It is my hope that this budget presentation illustrates how the borough strategically puts our investments, development, commerce, and grants to work, so there is little financial burden as possible on the residents that live in Conshohocken. That's important to all of us. It's our belief that the borough will continue to evolve forward through this proposed 2025 budget, along with collaboration from all facets of the community, like we've done in the past. The borough's budget ultimately is the vehicle which ensures that all community goals and priorities are achieved, and it lays the foundation which enables our team to enhance the quality of life for everyone in Conshohocken. So we're honored to serve you. We're honored to serve you on a regular basis, and we are honored to serve all the residents of Conshohocken. So at this time, I'll take any questions that council or the mayor may have. Any public comment on the budget itself? Okay. So I'll conclude by saying thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your consideration of the 2025 proposed budget. It's an honor to work diligently every day to make Conshohocken the premier place to live, work, play, and grow. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Stephanie. Okay, it is 6:59. We're going to take a 2-minute, 3-minute break to do what we need to do, switch over our AV, and we'll come back at 7:02, please.